everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from May 28th, 2021. I'm recording this on Wednesday, November 24th, 2021. I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving because I'm recording this before. You'll see it after, so I hope you had a nice holiday weekend is going on for you right now. So, as always, I give you the dates so that you know when this information is most relevant because the market's always moving and changing. And as always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Basically, they put out their lists. We go back and look at them 6 months later to try to determine, would you have been better off being patient? What factors made these books hot? Why did they hit these lists? Would you have been better off being patient? Did you need to jump on them when you had the chance? Just so we all make better decisions about what books we chase, what books we're patient on, is the goal. I will tell you, we're getting ready to go into this list. This is maybe the worst performing list I've ever had when you take in the totality. I think a couple factors, just the books that are on it, obviously, but also just how crazy the market was by the late spring. Because even some of the good books on here are down, and I think it's just because the market was so ridiculously crazy hot. But let's get into these books. We'll talk about them individually and see what we can learn. So first up, we have Hardcore number 1. This is basically hit the list because there was an announcement that Universal was making it into a movie, that the director of Godzilla vs. Kong was attached to do it. So this is also a Robert Kirkman property, so there was a lot of buzz about this just in general. So raw copies jumped all the way up to $40 to $60, which is a huge number based on option news or movie news for some sort of random title that's not really like one that's high in the consciousness that most people hadn't even heard of before this. So that's a huge number, $40 to $60. Well, it didn't sustain that at all. Right now it's a $1 to $15 book. 9.8 sale. There was only one. It went for 40 plus shipping. This has turned into a massive dumpster fire if you tried to chase this book at $40 to $60. Just in general, option news is a bad time to chase a book, and this is one of the worst case scenarios I've seen in a while. So next we have Witches number 1. Basically, this was Scott Snyder coming forward and saying that he had finished working on the script for this project to have it turned into a movie, I believe, not a TV show. I believe it's a movie. Caused raw copies of this to jump to $20 to $25, and 9.8 hit 200. These are a little more typical prices for something that's optioned as compared to what that hardcore was going for. This also did not sustain. We haven't had any news on this for a while. This book has dropped back $5 to $15 for raw copy. 9.8s are running $100 to $150. It's kind of where it was before Snyder made that announcement that this has been kind of the background long-term price for this book, and that's where it's back down to. So definitely turned into a bit of a trap. If you were paying 25 and it's 10, you paid more than double what it's worth. Kind of the same thing on 9.8. So definitely turned into a bit of a trap, even more than an I'll Be Back. Next we have Interview with a Vampire number 1. This was news at AMC. Obviously this was a movie. This was a book series. They made comics from it. Then they made a movie back in the 90s. And then now AMC was going to make this into a show. Was going to bring back this series for a show. Caused raw copies to jump up to $15 to $25. Now it's a $1 to $15 book, mostly below 10, but occasionally jumping up to 15. Another book that's kind of turned into a trap. It's more than half what it was. Just not enough to sustain it. Yeah, there was some news, but there hasn't been any news since. These things take time. Pretty typical. Again, more option news for our next book. This is Mech Cadet U, which was actually on the list last week. We were talking about last week that raw copies were going for $30 to $40 plus. At that point, I determined when you looked at current prices, it was a trap. By this week, it was going for $50 to $75 for raw copies. So even higher than that hardcore. And it's dropped basically just as much. It's a $5 to $20 book. So this has kind of turned into another dumpster fire. This was just going to be an animated movie. The movie we knew then wasn't coming till 2023. That was part of the announcement that they were targeting 2023 for a release. And people were paying $50 to $75 for this. Just a terrible decision to kind of chase this book at that point when you knew you had a couple of years before it was going to happen. And yeah, it's can be easily had for around $10 now. Next, we're going to move into covers. We have 5 covers this week that made the list. First up, we have Something is Killing the Children, number 16. The Frizen Black and White, 1 in 50. Now, these Something is Killing the Children books have been very hot. Frizen covers for them have been very hot, particularly like the incentives and that kind of stuff. Raw copies of this out the gate were going for $65, which actually, though, goes against everything related to how hot Something is Killing the Children has been. 16 was definitely more highly ordered than most of the rest of the series had been before then, because it was the first book after the hiatus. 65 on a 1 in 50 is not hardly even hot, I'll be honest. But they put it on the list. Now it's a $20 to $50 book, which is pretty typical. If a book doesn't even make double ratio, it usually settles below ratio. That's what's happened here, even with a Something is Killing the Children book. 9.8, only going, the last 2 9.8 sales that were auctions went for $60 and $70, and those are the only 9.8 sales since kind of early in September. Back then it was going, the 9.8 sales September and earlier were 150 plus, but nobody's paying that in the last 2 months, basically, for this book. So this one definitely turned into a monster trap. I was wrong. I thought, even though it was off to the slow start, it might buck the trend because it was Something is Killing the Children. I was wrong in that prediction, for sure. Next, we have Something is Killing the Children, number 16. This is the 1 per store Virgin variant. So this was kind of their Virgin variant. This one was going for $125 plus out the gate, which is a huge number for a 1 per store. Just a massive number. At the time, my notes from like when I did the Cash or Trash said, who am I to doubt at this stage? Like, I want to say it's an I'll be back or a trap, but who am I to doubt? So I said some straight cash. I should have doubted. It's now a $40 to $60 book. 9.8s are $175 to $250. I will say 40 to 60 on a 1 per store variant is a huge number. Huge, like compared to most 1 per store variants that come out on stuff. But just not anywhere near the hype when it was first released. So, still showing Something's Killing Children still got value, just not that crazy what it was when it was released. So this one also turned into a trap if you paid those initial prices. You could argue, I should call this one a dumpster fire too. Probably should have. Next, we have Seasons Beatings, number 1, the Marco Djurjevic Kang variant. And as you know, with the Loki show was getting ready to start and everything, everybody was, anything that had Kang even slightly attached to it was going for more money than it should have. And this Kang cover was going for big money in anticipation of the Loki show. $40 to $50 for raw copy for this thing, because it was kind of a cool Kang variant. I said I'll be back on this one. I should have been harsher. This has turned into a trap. It's only a $10 to $20 book. Another one that's borderline a dumpster fire, honestly. Like, paid $45 and now worth $15. That's a third of the value. That's way down for the Season Beatings. I mean, it's a cool Kang variant, but that's really all it's got going for it. There's nothing else really here. So, next we have Bitterroot, number 13. This is the Sanford Green. I forgot to write down on my notes. I wrote it on the slide, I know, but notes with what movie poster this was. But they've had a ton of these movie poster homages for these Bitterroots as variants. This one was going for $25. It's down to a $5 to $15 book, but only 4 sales. So it's not really moving very much, even at those lower prices. So this one also turned into a bit of a trap just because there's not really, you can't hardly sell it, even for less. So, next, our last kind of cover of the week is We Live, number 5. This is a second print foil variant that was limited to 300 copies. This has a cover appearance of the Paladons. I guess that's how you pronounce them. Raw copies of this out the gate were going for $140. Again, an insane number for a limited variant right off the bat. Still going 70 to 90, which is half, but that's pretty good value. But 9.8 can be had for just slightly more than that, 100 to 150. Another book that just turned into a trap. You see Every book so far I've talked about, this was number 9 on the list this week, has been a trap or a dumpster fire. That is just the kind of week we had back in the spring. And it continues with our next book, which is our One Comic Buzz book of the week. That is X-Men number 53. This is the first appearance of Onslaught. We had rumors that they were maybe bringing Onslaught back into this Hickman run on X-Men. Hickman's kind of moved on. Some of his plans kind of got scrapped. I don't think we ever saw Onslaught. Maybe my X-Men readers, I gave up on most of the X titles. X-Men readers will tell me I'm wrong on that he did show up, but raw copies back then were going for $30. 9.8 hit $250. Now raw copies are $5 to $20, mostly $10 to $15. 9.8 cost you $100 to $150. So another trap this week. Another book that did not hold that kind of value that we typically expect. So we're now on a book 11, and we're finally going to get something that didn't turn into a trap. This is Superman 10 Cent Adventures number 1, the first appearance of Cyril, which is the kind of an alternate Supergirl. She's the daughter that was created by Brainiac. Basically, there was people thought that she was going to be the version of Supergirl that's going to appear in the Flash movie. So we had some rumors there. We've seen the actress. She's got dark hair, which would match this one more than your traditional Kara character. So version of Supergirl. So raw copies on this only jumped though to $5. There were a bunch of sales. This is one of those Tom Key Collector books that they put on because a whole bunch of people buy copies even though they weren't really going for much. A 9.6 went for all of $35, which is basically that person didn't even get grading and shipping costs really paid for by selling it for $35. So that's not really that high. But anyway, now it's still a $1 to $10 book. So yeah, it's steady. So that's about the best we could do this week. It's definitely an I'll be back. It's like you could grab it at any time for basically $1. It's not that hard to get. Next up, we have Superman, the Man of Steel, number 22, the first appearance of John Henry Irons, Steel. This hit the list because there was rumors that this character was going to be added to the Lois and Superman show, or Superman and Lois Lane show. I forget what they call it. But anyway, the CW show, this character was coming. This is another kind of Tom Key Collector book. Was only jumped up to $5. 9.8 hit 75. There were basically a bunch of sales, so they put it on the list. Now it's a $1 to $10 book. 9.8s are still 60 to 70-ish, so it's been pretty steady, but I still kind of rate it as an I'll be back when it's just cheap, and you can still occasionally find it for $1. Yeah, that's definitely a book that you can find, just that there's no reason to chase in the moment, for sure. Next, we have our first of our MCU spec, which is the rest of the list. There's 5 books here. We have Ghost Rider number 28, the first appearance of the Midnight Suns. This was also on the list last week. Last week they were talking about raw copies at 30, 9.8 at 350. Raw copies were still in that same kind of range, 20 to 40, but 9.8 had jumped all the way up to $400 to $500. That's why it hit the list again. Now raw copies are 10 to 30. So you can argue down to an I'll be back on the raw copies, but 9.8s are down to $200 to $250, so half what they were going for back then. So that's definitely a trap on the 9.8 side. Most of the sales, probably should have put this in I'll be back because most of the sales are raw copies, but definitely another book that's down. Next, we have Infamous Iron Man number 1, first appearance of Tony Stark as an AI. This basically was hitting the list because there were rumors that it was that Robert Downey Jr. was going to come back in some form or fashion to the MCU. People thought it might be as an AI, like he'd left behind an imprint of himself that was going to help Riri or some other characters going forward. Back then, raw copies were going 20 to 50. I say 20 to 50. They'd already peaked at 50 early that week and we're down to $20 to $30 by the time even the shows were going on and the lists were being made. So it was already coming down. Now it's a $10 to $30 book. 9.8 will cost you $100 to $150. So this definitely turned into an I'll be back. I think there's a possibility we see this, but I'm not sure how this is really that big of a key. So we'll see. Next, we have Captain America number 16, the first appearance of Sin, who is the daughter of the Red Skull. rumors that this might be the villain for Captain America 4 is what drove this book. Raw copies back then were going for $50. Now they're $15 to $30, and the one 9.8 sale was $130. So definitely another kind of trap. We're going for averaging less than half of what it was back then. Long way from Cap 4 in terms of who knows who the villain will be. Maybe this will pay off, but definitely, again, avoid the rumors, avoid the news, and you can usually do with a better deal. Next, we have Marvel Comics Presents number 117, first meeting of Wolverine and Venom. This continues a trend of books that were hitting the list in the spring, or that we've talked about over the last few weeks, of first meetings suddenly becoming a popular thing that people are collecting. That's what was going on here a little bit. Raw copies were going for $30 plus. Now it's a $10 to $30 book. This one I thought might be a trap. It turned into one of the few that turned into an I'll be back and not a trap. But why? Why were we suddenly chasing this? Do we really think, with Venom being held by Sony and Wolverine being held by Marvel, do we really think we're going to get a Wolverine and a Venom movie? I don't think so. Unless Disney gets the rights to all of them, this seems like a really far-fetched on spec, but I guess kind of a cool first meeting. I don't know if this is a first meeting I would ever even slightly have on my radar, though. And last but not least, we have Eternals number 1. This hit the list because the trailer dropped. Since then, obviously, we've had the movie. Back then, the trailer dropped, and 9.8 peaked out at $3,800. Raw copies were averaging $350. 9.6 was hitting $1,650. This is how crazy the market was back in the spring. Now, raw copies are $50 to $250. 9.6 is going for $300 to $400. 9.8 are down to $12 to $2,000. I think I wrote trap on this. I should have wrote dumpster fire, which is bad because it's a good book. I enjoyed the movie. Prior to the movie, 9.8s were still in the $2,000 to $3,000 range, but we've already forgotten. We've moved past. I don't know. I guess just the nature of the movie. I know it wasn't a huge hit compared to some of the Marvel movies, but I enjoyed it. But yeah, this book has crashed, but it was already crashing post-trailer before the movie even came out. I think the market got too hot on the trailer. I've talked about that the trailers tend to be the actual peak on some of these as opposed to even the show or the movie. That appears to have been the case with Eternals, and this book has continued to drop way back now that we are post-movie. So that is this week's list. I want to thank you guys for watching. It was a really rough week if you invested in any of these books back in the spring. Hopefully you were patient on them because now you can get some pretty good deals. So we will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.